We have on the show today on Newsnight Sanjay Singh, senior journalist, who's going to be joining us on the show. Sanjay is there. We also have Pavan Duggal, a very eminent cyber security expert on the show. Pavan Duggal, and also Subimal Bhattacharjee, cyber security expert here in our Delhi studio. And I'm going to, in fact, quickly go across to Mr. Duggal to open this part of the discussion. Mr. Duggal, do you think not enough has been done when it comes to setting a strong deterrent in terms of cracking real whip on those, for example, the group admins, the source of fake news on social media? Do you think not enough has been done? And if yes, why are we not trying to escalate this whip? Because this is now really creating a lot of problem. It seems that we have a plethora of fake news, misinformation, propaganda being circulated on daily basis 24/7, which is obviously adding to a lot of panic. How do we stop that? Sanjay Duggal.
Well, thank you for your question. First and foremost, my clear answer to that question is no. India is not fully prepared to deal with this social media pandemic. India never really expected that this on social media there'll be so much of fake news which will be happening. That's why fake news was never given that kind of priority. This is despite the fact that other countries like Singapore and Malaysia have come up with detailed legal frameworks to deal with fake news per se. But having said that, this itself has to be a wake-up call for the Indian nation. We do have the Information Technology Act.
No, but when will we wake up? Subimal Bhattacharjee, when are we going to wake up? I mean, there has to be some solution somewhere. Subimal, very quickly, yes.
Yeah, I think what has happened is that COVID and the coronavirus incidence has given a force multiplier to the fake news industry that has been going around not only in India but across the world for quite some time. Now, if you look at the way that it has been going around and the steps that has been taken, I would think that we have taken some extra steps even in this country. Besides the IT, as Mr. Duggal was mentioning, there is no direct specific provision within the IT Act, but there are provisions that can be used, even along with the IT Act. You look at the Disaster Management Act section 54, that clearly outlines if a situation of panic is created and such kind of circulation happen. You also have provisions of the IPC, specifically section 505, and also the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897.
But you're saying that these acts are there, but then
no, there has been a lot of arrests this time. If you see across the country in many states, there has been a lot of.
But is that enough? Let me take this to Sanjay. Sanjay, you facing this problem on daily basis at the very outset when we had this COVID-19 crisis staring at us, and I'm sure each one of us in our cell phones, on our Facebook pages or social media platforms, we continuously get these fake news alerts. Not many of us would be able to really identify whether this is real or fake. And by the time we realize, maybe the damage is done, Sanjay.
Yeah, precisely. That's what has happened in case of Andhra, which you mentioned in your opening remarks. And then we got to know that this particular thing, the whole, I would say, conspiracy was done only to highlight, only to grab headlines and put India, I would say, India in bad light not before its own people, but to people abroad and to decision makers and to a whole lot of people. And then you have, I would broadly categorize them in 2 or 3 parts. A, to create some kind of mischief in the sense of misinformation or human mongering. B, whereby you create certain disturbances. B, to malign certain dispensation, administrative or ruling. And C, to kind of malign certain individuals. This happening at a time when India is standing broadly as one nation, one people, barring some habitual critiques and cynics. This happening at a time is really very unfortunate. And the action that you are talking about, yes, some arrests have been done. And through doing this arrest and some slapping them on stringent measures, like in some cases, not really in fake news, but in some cases NSA has been slapped. The message is to send even if the finally when this goes to court and cases are not proved, the I think the intention is to send a strong message across that if you create a mischief, the state is no longer going to tolerate it.
Pavan Dugal, your thoughts on it? States should not tolerate this. Nobody should tolerate it. We have agencies, but is it so difficult to trace and track the real source of fake news on social media platform?
It's not that difficult. Of course, it's being made more difficult thanks to social media companies and platforms. And I think it's here that our weakness as a nation lies. We do have adequate provisions under the Information Technology Act, Section 79 of the IT Act, to mandate these service providers to do a variety of things to prevent the dissemination and publication of fake news on their platforms. But we, as a country, have chosen not to walk that path. On the other hand, we go with the folded hands and bended knees to these service providers in the form of an advisory.
No, but why can't we pull up these service providers? I mean, why would we as a country take onus for the fake news circulation? I'm not the one who is circulating this. I'm getting it in my cell phone because this is coming from a source where perhaps there is no fear of law.
That's why the reason
I
is
mean,
that
I
we
would
must
want to know,
start taking
Shubhamal,
strict action.
how many, I mean, please enlighten us. Are there cases where group admins of these WhatsApp groups have been taken into custody? They have been pulled up. Are there cases?
No, see, as far as...
There are cases. Sorry, is that a question to me?
Okay, yes, you can also take it and Shubhamal can respond to that.
Okay, so quickly, there are cases. The law is very settled that the administrators of WhatsApp groups will be liable for all kind of unwarranted content. But I'm talking of a different platform altogether. I'm talking of the government coming up with specific rules under Section 87 of the IT Act, for which they don't really need to go to Parliament. They can do it tonight, mandating these service providers to ensure that they better well comply with the non-publication of fake news on the network with penal consequences. And if they don't do so, then appropriate consequences
I'm
and the law
going to
will
take
follow.
this to Sanjay also, but Shubhamal, your thoughts? Yes.
No, I think, the rules that define the operation of the intermediaries, the social media entities that we know legally, I think they are very clear. Of course, the revised rules and guidelines were supposed to be already announced. If that came in, then the responsibility on the intermediaries to go to the source of all these fake news, that comes very strong. So I would think, this is one of the big steps that has to be taken. We are still depending on the rules that have been announced in April 2011. So this is one of the steps that we have to take very proactively from the government side.
See, I don't know how a service provider can, to begin with, exactly identify whether this is a fake news or real news. Having said so, that part of course will follow. We have government, you mentioned PIB fact check, and you have also Sarbadi fact check services. And the problem is, by the time these fact check services come into play, and by the time those fact checks are kind of disseminated and forwarded, but prior to that, damage is actually done. In so many cases, government clarifications have been there. Say, for instance, people stranded at Vaishno Devi, and that particular narrative was made only to counter what happened with Tablighi Jamaat. And when people started criticizing on various forums, actually based on facts and circumstances, then a different kind of narrative with fake news and so on also began. Then you have photographs, and then you have videos, which either does not concern India or something which happened very years ago in some other context. Those things are presented as something that has happened today. I think I think state needs to take very strong measures, because otherwise, look, who are peddling this fake news? People who are actually educated. This is not what you say, some illiterate person who does not anything, somebody who knows how to peddle it, what to use it, and to what effect should we use it. And at some place, an inadvertent mistake perhaps can be done by some person, but that part, I think, between malevolent and or bona fide mistake, I think can always be identified. But yes, it's need to be dealt with strongly.
No, but what are we waiting for? Right? That's exactly, Pavan Dugal, coming to you. I think we've done so many shows with you, if you remember, on the national channel itself. And this issue is only escalating. And we cannot, Pavan, you would agree, afford this at this juncture.
Surely we cannot afford doing that. Therefore, a big chunk, and I think a responsibility that we have to disseminate is that of creating more awareness amongst the people. And though there's a lot of good initiatives done by the government, I think far more needs to be currently done in terms of sensitizing people of the disastrous impact that the social media and the fake news is going to have on
everything is
people.
fine, but my question is that who is liable for the fake news, misinformation, fake propaganda content, which to the extent also communalizes something like pandemic, where we're losing lives. I mean, this is extremely unfortunate, isn't it? Isn't it? Shubhamal, one final comment from you.
Yeah, I think, some of the steps taken by the government this time has been very proactive. Even if you see the PIB fact check, the pace at which they do things. And if you look at the Supreme Court's direction to the government on 31st March, and after that, how the Home Secretary went after all these states, to go ahead and come up with actions. I think many states have taken this. There is a larger issue of getting into, a mix of changing the laws, making it stronger, empowering your police guys, educating them, involving them more in taking strong steps, and then, even the judicial process, making it faster. So these are some of the larger steps, but I think
this is when media itself, when the private media itself falls prey to such fake news circulation. And by the time you pull out that news, although the court has said very, very clearly that please publish first certain facts from the mechanism which has been provided by the government, rather than sensationalizing something as serious as this. That's a very, I mean, I think the buck also stops with the media when it comes to reporting such pandemics with a lot of care, lot of responsibility, and lot of sensitivity in terms of numbers. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's all we have time for in this edition of Newsnight, tackling fake news at this juncture. Thank you for talking to us. And as we wrap up this edition of Newsnight, we have some more news coming in, and following the call